guys, my name is Blake Newton. I'm with UK Entomology, and we're here talking about the Stream Team project, which is something that you can do through your local 4-H office. And the part of the project we're talking about today is macroinvertebrates. So when you're a part of the Stream Team, one of the things that you do is you go to your stream in your area, in your neighborhood, and you monitor it for lots of different things that are going on. You'll look for the chemical qualities of the water, the habitat. And one of the things that you'd look for are the macroinvertebrates. The macroinvertebrates are the little creatures like insects that live in the water, and they can tell us a lot about water quality. So whenever you do your test, you have to bring a couple of things with you. You actually don't need too much. You need a net like this, and you need a white bucket to put the creatures in. You need to bring some identification tools, and then you need your data sheet or your online data app. But the first thing that you do when you arrive at a location is you have to decide how many habitat types that you have, because you need to sample each of those habitat types. So when we're looking at a stream like this, the main habitat type that we see here is riffles. So a riffle habitat type is where you have shallow water that's bubbling up over rocks, and this is very good habitat, by the way, for macroinvertebrates. But we want to look for other habitat types too, because different creatures will live in different parts of the stream. One of the habitat types, for instance, is packs of decaying leaves in the water. Another type would be if you have a lot of aquatic weeds growing up out of the water. We actually don't have those two types here, so we can simply ignore that part of the test for this, but we do have riffles, and another part that we have is a pooled area. So we'll take a look at that here in a second. For the different habitat types that you'll find in the stream, you should have at least a couple. For one thing, the stream type that you pick for your project should at the very least have riffles. That's one of the more important habitat types and the kind that you're most likely to find macroinvertebrates in. And another one that you will probably find in almost every stream, even if you don't have decaying leaves, even if you don't have weeds growing up out of the water, is pooled areas. And this is a very typical pooled area. This is where the water gets a little bit deeper, a little bit slower, and so different creatures are going to live here. And if you think about it, from some of the other tests you might have done, like dissolved oxygen, different creatures need different levels of oxygen. So the pooled areas are going to have a little less oxygen than the riffle areas that get hit by flowing water and a lot of oxygen. So that's the reason why we want to sample each of these habitat types. So when you're actually sampling for your macroinvertebrates, once you found your habitat types, then you need to start hunting. And the goal is to take your group, your stream, and divide them up into the different habitats, search those areas for as long as they need to be searched, and your worksheet will tell you that. And you just need to start digging in. You want to use a combination of your net and just physically looking for creatures in each of these locations. I want to show you how to use the net. The net is the most useful in a riffle habitat, and it's also useful in submerged weeds. We don't have submerged weeds here, but in submerged weeds you can scoop the net up under those weeds and look for any creatures that might be hanging on to the weeds. And they're also good. This is also useful in the pool, so you don't have to actually dive in and go swimming. You can dip this down into the pool and dig it around the rocks a little bit. But what this net is really made for is riffles. So we find this nice riffle habitat where the water is very shallow, and we stick our net down in it so that the water is flowing into it. So the water flow is going in this direction. And then we put our feet in front of it and start kicking rocks around it, and that forces the creatures that are dislodged to flow into the net. Then we lift our net up, we look inside, start picking creatures out, and put them into our white bucket. So that's how we use our net. But one of the main ways that we find creatures is just by physically looking at them with our hands. So we can just start lifting up rocks and seeing what's under there. Get a little closer and see if we can even see some of these creatures. This first rock that I picked up has at least two kinds of creatures in it. It has these things that look like very rough rocks are actually case-making caddisflies. You can actually see one of them there coming out of its case. That actually might be a pupa of one. So those are all little creatures. There's also a planaria, which is a flatworm that's hanging out here. So each of these creatures we would want to tally, and one of the best ways to do that is just to take a couple off, put into your white bucket, and then look at it later to make sure you've tallied each of these creatures. So really digging in and looking under the rocks and looking for creatures is one of the best ways to find a lot of these things. And you can do that in the pooled areas and in the riffles. So the way our assessment works, and the way the reason why we have this macroinvertebrate test is because some of the creatures that live in the water are more sensitive to pollution and to impacts than others. And that's why our scoring sheet is set up the way it is. So the creatures that are the most sensitive to pollution and impacts are going to be less likely to live in streams that are impacted. So those creatures are worth more points. So the more of the creatures that are sensitive that you get more points. For instance, and the way the scoring system works is that some creatures are worth 4 points, some creatures are worth 3, some creatures are worth 2, and some are worth 1. So to give you an example of one of these creatures, this is one of our 4-point creatures. This is a mayfly nymph. So this creature is only going to be found in pretty clean streams. It requires high levels of oxygen. And if you look closely, you can even see that it has gills on the side of its body that move visibly. So it's very dependent on having oxygen in the water. So this is a 4-point creature. You're only going to find this in certain kinds of streams. And let's contrast that with something like our damselfly nymph, which is also an amazing creature and definitely something that you like to have in your water body. But these creatures are a little bit more tolerant to lower oxygen levels. These guys can be found in still ponds or even ditches where you don't have quite as much oxygen, so they can handle streams that are a little bit more impacted by humans. So this creature is only worth 1 point. So it's still worth something, and we still like to have it in our stream, but it's not worth as much as that mayfly, which is one of the indicator species. They tend to be indicators of higher quality water and healthier, less impacted water. Okay, so after you've searched each of your habitat types for the amount of time that you need to search them for, and you've gathered all of your creatures together, and by the way, it doesn't matter which creatures you found where. It doesn't matter if you found them in the pooled areas or in the riffle. You can combine them all together for the final tally, and you start looking through your bucket. And there are pictures in your guide to help you identify these creatures, but we look at all the creatures in here, identify which type that they are. For instance, I've just pulled up this kind of worm-like creature that has a hard shell on its head and fairly large mandibles. That is a helgramite. It's a type of insect larva. That's one of our creatures that's worth 4 points on our tally sheet. We also got a crayfish here. We've got a damselfly nymph. We have mayflies. We have sow bugs. So we have a lot of different creatures in here. Each of these is going to be worth a different amount of points, and your score sheet will tell you about that. And it doesn't matter how many of each kind of creature you found. For instance, so we've got this crayfish. I believe crayfish are worth 2 points on our sheet. And it doesn't matter if you find more than one crayfish. That doesn't mean you get 2 points each time. You just get 2 points once for a crayfish. So it doesn't matter how many crayfish you find. You get 2 points for finding a crayfish. Same thing with this damselfly nymph. You just get the amount of points it's worth one time. So you don't even need to collect a whole bunch of these if you don't want to. Like if you see more than one helgramite, for instance, just collect the one and tally it off. Then when you get to the end, you multiply your points together, add them up, and it will give you a score. The score goes somewhere between 0 and in the 30s. And it's divided up by, you can either have a very good score or fair, marginal, or poor. We got a score of around 30-something today, which is good, but not the very highest score that you can get for a stream. And then you're done. You should let your creatures back you should let them go back into the water, especially if you're in an area like this. So we're in Raven Run Nature Sanctuary today. We have permission to be here to sample the creatures, but you're not allowed to remove or kill anything when you're in a nature sanctuary. So make sure you check with wherever it is you're sampling, city park, some kind of state park or national park. Make sure you have permission to be there, and make sure you have permission to interact with those creatures like we do here today at Raven Run. So hopefully you guys can get out with your stream team and start collecting some macros.